what we're seeing now is social pressure from majority activists, the quiet majority, the people who have up until now just wanted to be left alone.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion,
Right.
which all three sound good. Diversity means, having lots of people from different walks of life. That sounds good. Equity, that sounds like equality. So everyone's like, oh, okay, I'm for equality. It's not what equity means, and it's not what the left means by it either.
We don't like non-neutral corporations.
Yeah.
We want neutral corporations. Why do we want a corporation to exist? To make us products that we want and need.
Hello, and welcome to the Pop Culture Contrarian with Sterling and Andrew.
Hello.
We're missing Thomas today. He is off for Thanksgiving, which is what we are about to be doing as well. But for now, we're bringing you your weekly hit of the Pop Culture Contrarian. We know how important that is.
It will come out the week after Thanksgiving as you're listening to this.
Yes, that is true. Just a quick shout out. Andrew didn't know I was going to say this. If your name is Robert and you spoke to me in the movie theater for Bonhoeffer, apologies. This episode is not about Bonhoeffer. That will be in the future. It will come out the week after this one. But
yes, tune back in. We will be covering Bonhoeffer.
Yes. All right. So our topic today is Robby Starbuck, DEI Slayer.
Well, he's actually quite a skilled vampire hunter.
Man, Robby, if you're listening to this, you've got to adopt that somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know, just what a great name.
It is a good name. It is a good name, and you're
t-shirts.
the man. And yeah.
Billion hats, billion t-shirts.
Yeah, Starbuck is awesome. If you haven't heard of Robby Starbuck, go check him out on X. Robby Starbuck, and look at the work he is doing. Not only is he an awesome director.
Are they intentionally sexualizing our children and stealing their innocence?
I think that's right.
He's making films, but he is what Sterling and I have been calling conservative activist.
Yes.
He is a conservative activist. Something that we have not on the right had a whole lot of success at in, kind of really ever.
Yeah, it hasn't been a priority too much either. But before we dive in too much, let's go ahead and plug ourselves. So we are the Pop Culture Contrarian. We're on all major platforms. If you're on YouTube, hit the bell so you know when we release a new video. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know, hey, this would make a great topic. We'll be happy to cover it, and we'd love to hear from you. All right, so Robby Starbuck.
Yes, he is taking it to the corporations, and specifically, I think we've counted at least 15 major corporations.
Where he has had a major impact in them rolling back these work policies.
In rolling back DEI policies. And if you're not familiar with what that is, essentially it's like affirmative action on steroids.
Well, it's that, and it's some other things bundled in too, so in case you're somehow listening to us and don't know the acronym by heart by now.
Yeah.
It's diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Right.
Which all three sound good. Diversity means, having lots of people from different walks of life. That sounds good. Equity, that sounds like equality. So everyone's like, oh, okay, I'm for equality. It's not what equity means, and it's not what the left means by it either. And then inclusion, which basically means you can't say anything that anyone's going to be offended by.
Yeah. So more or less, it's like some examples of this would be preferential hiring. So say you have a black homosexual man who has applied to some high position, and that individual is going to get preference as a hiring candidate, as opposed to anyone else who might have equal or better credentials.
Yeah. On that exact topic, I'm rewatching the TV show 30 Rock from about 20 years ago right now. And there's a scene that's exactly like this, where Alec Baldwin plays a high-powered executive at NBC, and he's mentoring this middle manager guy, and he's trying to put him up for a big promotion. And he's like, don't worry, you've got this in the bag. We like to promote from within. The other candidate isn't even, he's not an employee here. So you've got this in the bag. I've put in a good word for you. You got this. And then the other candidate rolls in because he's a black guy in a wheelchair. And Alec Baldwin turns to his mentee and says, yeah, you're not going to beat that.
Right. Well, it's just the antithesis of meritocracy.
Yeah.
It is based on, I guess, what are usually argued as immutable characteristics being the most important consideration for anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's that and more. It's been a lot of things like, for example, Tractor Supply, I think, had like a full page or a significant part of their magazine, I guess, that they put out, their coupon book or whatever you would call it, that was dedicated to LGBTQ support and pride and stuff like that. And Robby Starbuck, what he did is, and this is how he kind of goes about this, he reaches out to the company, he says, hey, Tractor Supply, I'm going to write an article about this stuff, and I'm not going to be flattering about it. And I just wondered if you want to work with me and or just give me a comment on this. And very frequently what they'll do is say, please don't write that. We'll undo it right now.
Yeah. Well, what I think the canary in the coal mine for this has been Target and Bud Light.
Yes.
And especially Bud Light. That's going to be like the case study for marketing students and the marketing departments for the next 20 years of what not to do to have a successful product and customer relations.
And the one we think will join those two, Target and Bud Light, that just happened is Jaguar.
Yes.
Or Jaguar. I can't even say it the way they say it. It's crazy.
Yeah. It turns out that when you cater to a minority and you don't express the values held by the majority of your customers don't want to buy your product.
Yeah. Yeah.
And furthermore, I'll take it this, and Bobby says this specifically, we don't like non-neutral corporations.
Yeah.
We want neutral corporations. Why do we want a corporation to exist? To make us products that we want and need.
Yeah.
That's it. We don't care about your political views. Really, we care about products and, generally speaking, American family values.
Yeah. Just, find that center line of America and stick to that, and don't go too far off to either side. It's like in the ad for Jeremy's Razors, which is the Daily Wire razor brand, which they launched after the Gillette Boys Will Be Boys ad, if y'all remember that from a few years back.
To act the right way.
Bro, not cool.
And he actually likes your money.
He likes your money. Yeah. Yeah.
He's not going to turn you away, which some of these campaigns have been effectively saying, don't shop here if you don't believe this way.
Yeah. It's been you've seen that somewhat with stores. You've seen it a lot with movies and video games where they're like, this isn't made for you. Just don't watch it. Don't play it. And then they don't. And wow, it's a big failure. So yeah, I want to just read this list in this meme that Robby Starbuck put on his Twitter account of all the companies he's basically gotten to backtrack on DEI stuff. So I'm just going to read you all the names of these companies. So it's Coors, as in the beer company, Toyota, DeWalt Tools, Harley Davidson, Stanley Black & Decker, Jack Daniels, Boeing, Craftsman, Caterpillar, Indian Motorcycle, Ford, Lowe's, John Deere, Tractor Supply, and now Walmart.
As many of you know, I've been investigating a massive company now for a while, and I have kept my lips sealed on who it was. Now I can reveal it was Walmart, but something incredible happened in the course of my investigation. Walmart became aware of our investigation and reached out to me. This was critical and honestly turned out pretty fantastic for everybody involved, in my opinion.
Which is the largest employer in America.
It is. And all of these companies you would kind of assume would have frankly, a manly bias.
Well, these are kind of, I guess you would say, a manly bias, or if anything, just a middle of the road bias, like an Americana.
Right. Ford, that's one of the biggest American brands of all time.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking motorcycles, pickup trucks, tractors, hardware, tools, airplanes.
So the way all this happened is
beer.
Yeah. The way all this happened is it's kind of a complicated story, but it began in places like Davos, Switzerland, when all the World Economic Forum people meet. They came up a few years back with this idea of ESG standards, which is environmental, social, and governance. And it's basically a credit score, a social credit score for your company. And all these companies started embracing that idea of, let's have a credit score. Let's try to make it good and get the rewards that follow. Of course, the problem is if you're out of line with whatever the WEF wants you to think, then you're going to get a low score. Like Tesla gets a very low score on these things mostly, even though it's one of the biggest green car brands in the world, electric car brands in the world. So in this just recent victory over Walmart, where they were selling chest binders for little girls, which is the idea is it's something you wear around your chest to make a little girl look more like a boy. I guess a teenage girl look more like a boy.
Right.
which is disgusting. And they're not going to do it anymore because Robby Starbuck found out about it and was going to put him on blast. But Walmart has backed out of all sorts of things, including these kind of social credit scores. I don't know exactly which one it was, but they said, we're backing out of this. We're not going to participate anymore, which is huge.
And it's really remarkable to me that these major backpedals are happening because of a guy on Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I know Robby is more than just a guy on Twitter, but
he is.
Effectively, that's kind of the optics of this stuff. And it's kind of awesome in a lot of ways.
For us, who agree with Robby on essentially everything, it is awesome.
Yeah.
And it's kind of some just comeuppance for all the activism and social pressure the left has put on all these companies for so long. The right has, as we said at the beginning, this is not something the right's been engaged in for most of American history. We're just starting to get into it. And so we want to let you know about these people who are doing these wonderful things and
indeed
get them more support.
Of course. And definitely go and follow Robby and check out his work. But I think a reason why it has gone the way it has is because most conservatives just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
They want to have their families, have their jobs, and have a nice life and live the American dream. But on the left, just seems to be this propensity towards you have to live the way I want you to live. And you have to accept my lifestyle and then also embrace my lifestyle. It's not just accept, it's embrace. And it just turns out after a while, if you keep poking the bear, so to speak, and just shoving this down people's throat, the people who want to be left alone, by the way, they eventually won't leave you alone anymore.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening.
Eventually, we said, okay, you're not going to leave me alone, so me trying to seclude myself isn't working. I'm going to stop trying to do that.
Right.
We'd like to get back to a place where everyone can just leave everyone else alone. And if some company wants to sell some crazy woke thing, then let the market handle it. But that's not the world we're in right now. Unfortunately, there's all these outside, even governmental pressures in one way or another. And so it needs correction.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing if the market was going to sustain these kind of products. Obviously, the products are just one aspect of this larger issue. But really, the thing is, this is social pressure from minority activists.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing now is social pressure from majority activists, the quiet majority, the people who have up until now just wanted to be left alone.
Yeah. The majority that just rejected woke nationwide.
Right.
And this is a little bit breaking news right now as we're recording this on the 27th of November. With most of the votes finally counted, almost more than 3 weeks after Election Day, every state in the union has actually gone more red than last time. So more towards the Republicans.
Unsurprising.
Yeah. But that's every state in the union, which is, that's
remarkable.
That's a trend. That's not a coincidence.
Indeed. Well, speaking of these, I guess, conservative activists, there's a list of a few different ones that we've identified beyond Robby who are worth noting.
Yeah.
I know one of them is James O'Keefe, of formerly Project Veritas, and now he's O'Keefe Media Group.
Yeah.
And he does this investigative journalism stuff where he uncovers all kinds of corruption.
Yeah. So kind of his modus operandi has been basically either he pretends to be gay or he has someone else. I don't know exactly who it is, but he schedules these dates with people from MSNBC or from inside one of the administrations, or
he has other people do it with
him. And he records these officials and or executives or whoever they are on these dates and basically tries to honey trap them into admitting what they're actually up to.
Yeah.
And he's been wildly successful. I think just recently he got an MSNBC, I don't think it was a host, but it was someone who produces a show or something on MSNBC to say, yeah, we are actively just doing whatever we can to promote Kamala Harris's presidential campaign.
Yeah.
Whatever her message of the day is, that's our message of the day.
So I have appreciated O'Keefe's journalism and bringing some of this stuff to the light. Another is Chris Rufo.
Yeah. He's been very big anti-critical race theory proponent.
Yeah.
So he's less of a investigative journalist, although he does do that. And he's more about, he writes the books and he writes the articles that give you the ammo you need to fight back against this stuff. He's been appointed by Ron DeSantis because of his anti-CRT stance to, what is the name of the title here? The Board of Trustees of, it doesn't actually say, a liberal arts college, I guess. But he's written books, he's been writing these articles, and he's been really hammering this crazy woke stuff. And it's very impressive. And we're glad to have him on our side.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, he's the one who uncovered the plagiarism from Claudine Gay, who was the president of Harvard.
Yes.
Yeah.
DEI hire if there ever was one.
Yeah. And I think maybe he was the one who reported on the plagiarism in Kamala Harris's book as well.
Wouldn't be surprised, but we'd have to verify that.
Yeah. There's some other people. There's like Andy No, who you may have heard his name. Whenever there's something like Chaz, which was the autonomous zone that was set up in Portland, he'll show up there and find out what's really going on and report back. And
he kind of came up with Tim Pool on Twitter back in the day.
Yeah.
And there were the citizen journalist. He's a citizen journalist type.
Yeah.
Really, individual, freelance journalist.
Yeah. So whenever there's some story that needs someone with eyes on the ground to record it on their phone and send it out to the world, and it's a story that the left or the mainstream corporate media wouldn't want to report on, Andy knows probably the guy there making sure everyone hears about it.
Yep.
And he's been very impressive doing that. And then I guess the last guy we wanted to talk about is Scott Pressler.
Yeah, Scott Pressler, the get the vote out Amish guy.
Mm-hmm. His nickname is The Persistence. He's a really fascinating guy. He's got super long hair, really tall guy too. Yeah.
But Scott, he in an interview not too long ago said that he's a super numbers guy, and he had been working in, I think he worked in the Trump White House, if I recall.
Let me see. I haven't pulled up somewhere here. Oh, maybe I don't.
But he found where the margin of the vote can be swayed.
Yeah, in Pennsylvania.
And he found that it was the Amish that were going to do it. And he went and mobilized them, saying, listen, the federal government is crushing you, because they'd been giving them all kinds of heck for how they want to raise food for their families.
Yeah.
And all kinds of...
I think it was some milk scandal.
Yeah,
specifically.
It was how they process milk and sell it to one another. And, it's probably, I think it's the FDA or...
And it's just another example of leave these people alone and you won't make new enemies.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't.
Well, they made big enemies of the Amish, and they played a decisive role in swinging Pennsylvania.
Yeah, because I think it was supposed to be something like 150,000 more Amish people voted in this election than the previous one, and that's pretty close to what Trump's win margin in Pennsylvania was. So if the Democrats hadn't ticked off the Amish, then who knows what would have happened.
Yeah, and normally you think this whole get out the vote thing, that's very much a Democrat idea.
Yeah,
it's a play. The whole, busing and no IDs and getting people to the polls. So it's just like a page out of the Democrat playbook used against them.
Well, and that's what we're seeing a lot of. Where the Republicans used to say, we're going to win the debate, we're going to stand in lecture halls and explain our worldview and just win people over by virtue of our wonderful rhetoric. The Democrats were like, yeah, we don't care about actually convincing anybody. We're going to get them to show up, or we're going to, tell them this one snippet of information that will make them want to vote for us and ignore all the context around it. And now we've got some Republicans who are starting to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And as we, I guess the conservative movement, when I say we, have been in the minority and or out of power so much of the last 12, 16 years, there's been, I guess, willingness to engage in some of these policies or in practices that we haven't been in the past. And it's worth noting that there has to be self-restraint, self-discipline imposed here, especially now that we're starting to get back into power. We don't want to be tyrants. We don't want to use this kind of activism the way the left uses it to suppress our weaker enemies. But when they're in power, or when they are stronger than we are, then, man, we're going to have to use the tactics they use, or else we're just never going to win.
Indeed.
Which is what you were seeing. This is a little bit of a tangent, but it's related to how the Democrats, who all this past campaign were talking about, when we win the Senate, we're going to get rid of the filibuster in the Senate. And the Republicans were like, no, we're not getting rid of the filibuster. This is part of the checks and balances in our government. And now the Republicans are in the Senate, controlling the Senate, and the Democrats are like, yeah, no, we're going to use the filibuster. Yeah, no, if we were in power, we'd get rid of it, but we're not. So we're going to use it, and they better not get rid of it because it's important.
Yeah, rules for thee, not for me.
Yeah. So sometimes you just have to be willing to get your hands dirty and fight the way they fight. And it's worth noting, none of these people we just mentioned, Chris Rufo, Andy No, Scott Pressler, Robby Starbuck, they don't do anything that we find distasteful. They don't do anything that we find inappropriate. James O'Keefe walks that line a little bit more than the other guys, but they're not doing anything wrong. And that's why we're happy to support them and tell you all about them.
Well, they don't really engage in doxing in the same way as I've seen others on the left. Though I will say James probably pushes the envelope.
He does.
To that, but I've never seen him like post addresses or that sort of thing, or like go out and specifically find, people who were trying to remain anonymous as like writers and that sort of thing, like what recently happened with the Not the Bee writers.
So Not the Bee is the actual news wing of the Babylon Bee satire organization.
More often than not, what I see is action against either prominent individuals or corporations.
Yeah. Frequently the headline, even from James O'Keefe, will be something like NBC executive says, not this person who works at NBC on this floor.
And it's not about the person.
Right.
It's about the corporation, the organization, or maybe the prominent person, but it's never about the private person.
Yeah.
That may be a facilitation for the story, but it's not about getting them fired or doxing them or telling people where they live or stuff like that, stuff you see so often from the left.
And I think that's maybe the way to wrap this conversation up is as the conservative movement is now in ways I never expected seemingly coming into power and really after January 20th will be in power in the US government. I just, up until that point, up until something actually happens, I don't want conservatives attacking, the new Trump administration because I'm just like, nothing's happened yet. We won an election, but that doesn't actually do anything. So let's wait until we've done something and then we can grade the actual results. And if it's a failing grade, we'll say so. But not only that, not only do we want to hold fire until there's something to judge, and then we do want to judge that accurately and fairly, but we don't want to become the person who takes power and then, like I said earlier, becomes a tyrant and squashes the weak, helpless opponent.
Correct.
We are all Americans, and Abraham Lincoln, I think, set the standard for this after the Civil War. His standard was, no, we're not going to exact huge punishment. We're not going to make the South rue the day they ever rebelled. We're going to welcome them back as our brothers.
Yes. And
that's what we should do with all these Democrats and all these people even people who vote Democratic, but I wouldn't say are Democrats, who have been lied to for so long and told to believe that these DEI, CRT practices are good things. We want, as they start to see the truth, as the scales start to fall from their eyes, we want to welcome them in and make it clear that America is for everybody that wants to be American.
Right. We want to move forward together as Americans to have prosperity and a bright future together.
Yes. Yeah. And if you want that bright future and prosperity, we welcome you. And if you don't, we don't.
Yeah. Clearly.
That should be pretty basic, but that's controversial in some circles, I think.
Yeah.
All right, Andrew, you got any final thoughts? Or
go out there, check out these individuals, learn more about them and the work they're doing, and it's some good stuff.
Yeah. We'll
go shop at Walmart, I guess.
Yeah, that's an important point. As these organizations back down, reward them. That's vote with your money. When they do something you don't like, stop buying from them. When they do something you do like, start buying from them.
Indeed.
Yeah. All right. I guess that's our episode. We're looking forward to talking about Bonhoeffer with you next week, but we want Thomas to be able to contribute because I think he'll have good things to say on that. This has been the Pop Culture Contrarian with Sterling and Andrew. We're brought to you by the Patriot Post, which is the oldest conservative news digest on the web. It's right, and it's free. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Bye.
See you guys.